Hi everybody, this is Mr. C again with a second video about Stellarium. What I want to do now is to show you some of the more advanced controls in Stellarium so that you can do even more in the way of simulating the sky. Last time we went through basic motions and time control. We did left mouse click and drag. We did scroll wheel up and down for zoom in and out. And we looked at time. We hit the L key in order to make time go forward, and the K key to make it go at the regular rate. And we went over here to date time window to change time. Okay, those are basic controls. Now let's look at a few more things you can do with Stellarium. Let's explore some of the controls in this lower toolbar which pops up. You can do things with constellations. Turn constellation lines on, constellation names, and even artwork if you want. That's really handy for learning constellations. If you want to amaze and astound your friends with your knowledge of the nighttime sky, that's a great way to learn it and a great way to quiz yourself. Some other things you can do are, you can look at this left toolbar over here. You can choose location, for example. I've got it set for San Jose. They even have Cupertino on this list. So you can pick any place in the world to look at the sky. You've also got sky and viewing options. Let's start with this sky panel here. Most of this you probably won't need to mess around with too much, but there will be some times where we use the planetarium to look at orbits of planets, and things like the show planet orbits may turn out to be important. There was a cool little shooting star. They put a few of those in here, and in fact that's what this thing is, hourly zenith rate. You can control how many spontaneous meteors there are. Some of these controls under markings are the same as what you have down here. For example, a lot of this stuff about constellations is the same as what we just looked at. Some of these things about grids, those are related to these grids down here. A little later on in the class we'll play around with equator and ecliptic and concepts like that, so you'll be able to turn on some of those things with these controls. These projections you don't really need to mess with too much. I tend to like to leave this on stereographic, although you can play around with some of the other displays. Landscape, you've got different landscapes. I like this one here. It's a landscape in France. It's fairly neutral and doesn't block the sky too much. Star lore is really cool. You can pick a different culture here. So if you want to look at constellations, say from classical Chinese culture, you just set star lore to Chinese, and then you can go down here, bring in constellation outlines, constellation names, and then you've got the sky as viewed by a different culture. It's pretty cool. You can look at the way different peoples look at the sky. So to change that, you go over to sky and viewing options and then change the different cultures. We can go to Polynesian, we can go to ancient Egyptian. We've got several choices here. Western is used not only in Western countries, but these constellation names are used by astronomers around the world. So you've got a lot of nice options there. Some other things that are kind of useful to play around with are some of these search and control windows. I'll let you play with some of that stuff on your own. Another thing that's really nice down here is the ability to turn the ground off if you want to look around at different parts of the universe. Here we can look at what's normally blocked by the Earth. That's pretty handy. We can turn these compass direction points on or off using that control. And we can make atmosphere go away for a nice black night sky, or a sky like you would see in space. Now on Thursday after class, a student had some questions, and we were over in my office using Stellarium to look at some of these things. And he had a good question. He said, is this thing here the Milky Way? Because it kind of looks like the Milky Way that we saw in the planetarium. Turns out that's actually a little detail called fog, and if we hunt around a little bit we can probably find that. I think that's in landscape, and you click off the show fog and you can take that away. So now you can look at the sky in any direction as though the Earth weren't there and you were just floating in space looking around at other planets like Uranus, looking at stars deep in the southern hemisphere like Achernar and Rigel Kent, stuff that you can't normally see from California, things like the Southern Cross here. So that's a really cool way to look at the whole sky. Or you can come back to ground and you can look at things the way we'd see them from the surface of the Earth. So those are some pretty neat controls. This allows you to look at the sky in all different directions and choose a bunch of different options. Another thing that's pretty slick is you can click on something and get information about it. So I just did a left mouse click there. Remember in class on Thursday I talked about magnitudes and I pointed at a bunch of different stars? We can click around and look at stars of different magnitudes. For example, there was a star that had a magnitude of 2. I use that as my magnitude 2 example. So you can click on these objects and get information about them. I right-click to make that go away. Sometimes if you click in a blank piece of sky, it'll go to a nearby star, or maybe it'll go to some deep sky object that you can't quite see.